Hi, this is Vicki Robinson of Vicki Robinson Designs, and today we're going to be talking about layered postage stamp frames. You can see I've got set 1 here open, and in this set there are 4 Photoshop elements, or photos, the full version of Photoshop templates, .psd files that you can use to customize, to add your photos, and I've added a couple of other options in here for the way these photos might be displayed depending on the number of photos that are in the template. Let's take a look at this unzipped folder here of the first template set. You can see, for example, that this PSD file has a spot for 6 photos, only one here obviously, and then you can see various photo spots here. I wanted to show you that if you look at this image right here on the preview, maybe we'll come back down here, there are actually spots for 6 photos, but an alternate way to use this template is to actually clip just 1 photo to get this cool kind of perforated look. So I wanted to show you how you can use these templates in different ways. Let's go ahead and open up the simplest one though. Start with the single photo template. I'm going to click and drag it up here into Photoshop Elements. I'm using PSE 2021. However, these steps will work in any version of Elements that you're using or in the full version of Photoshop. The first thing I want to do is draw your attention to the Layers panel, and let me pull this over here. Maybe you can see it a little bit better. There are 4 layers to this template. The top layer here is the frame itself. Let me move this out of the way. If I turn off the visibility of this layer here, you can see all the layers below. So the first layer is the frame itself. It's this white postage looking stamp, that frame. The second thing is the mask itself, and we're going to be attaching our photo to this solid gray mask to make the photo conform to the size of that mask. The third layer is a custom frame, shadow that I have applied. Made this kind of cool little curved shadow here that makes it appear that the stamp is lifted off. The bottom is lifted up off the page a little bit. But if you don't want to use that shadow, if you want to apply your own, the very last layer is a solid frame layer that you can use to add your own style or effect to if you choose to do that. So that's what's included with each template. You're going to find at least 1 mask, and I'll show you multiple masks in just a second. But I also wanted to show you something else here. Notice that these little chains here on each layer, those indicate, because they're gold, they indicate that the layers have been chained together. What that means is when they're chained together, if I go to move them around, they all move together. And let me Control or Command Z to undo that, put that back. And that's because you want the shadow, especially if you're using the custom shadow here, to stay with the photo itself, because if you move it around, it's going to look a little odd. Let me show you. If I unchain this, and to unchain 1 layer, I'm just going to click on it, see how it turned gray. I can now move the shadow layer, Control or Command T, and I can move the shadow layer around. But you know, that would look really weird. You definitely don't want to do that. So to make sure that you don't inadvertently move the layers that are meant to be together, I've chained them together. Let me just show you that you can click on the top one, click on the bottom, hold down the Shift key and click on the bottom one to select them all. And then if you want to, you can unchain them all if there's a reason to do that, just by clicking on, the right mouse click and say Unlink Layers. But for our purposes, I would suggest that you leave them linked together. And since they're all selected, I can right mouse click and say Link Layers. And then we get that little chain link back there. So the next thing we're going to want to do is to bring our photo onto our template. And I have a bunch of photos here already. Let's take a look at this one. I am just going to click, got my photo open here. It was in the photo bin. You can see them down here. I'm just going to click and drag this over on top. Just clicking and dragging and holding until I've activated my PSD file, and then I'm going to let go. And as you can see, this is very, very big. It came in very large, so I'm going to need to reduce the size. Control or Command T to get the transform handles. And I'm going to need to zoom out here. I'm going to use my Command and minus key, Control or minus key on a PC, so that I can actually see. This photo came in so large that you couldn't even see the transform handles. I'm going to click and drag from one of the corner handles, and you see that I've got this double-headed arrow on the diagonal. When you see that, you can click your mouse down and then click and drag in towards the center, and as you can see, it's resizing my photo. Now let's do it from over here. When you are trying to clip a photo to a mask, the most important thing is that the photo must be larger than the mask itself. So you can see that there are edges of my photo hanging out here around, and that's what I need. I need for the photo to be bigger than the mask itself. Now that we've got my photo sized, I'm going to click the green check mark to commit that change. Now what I need to do is attach my photo to the mask itself. And I'm going to do that by clicking on the photo layer and then coming up to Layer, Create, Clipping Mask. And as you can see in the Layers panel, the photo becomes slightly indented. There's a little white box here, and it's hard to see on the screen, but there's a little down arrow indicating that this photo has now been clipped to the mask below it. So if I want to reposition my photo now, making sure that my photo layer is activated, I can simply come here and adjust where I want this photo to be. So it's really that simple and very, very easy to do. So now the question is, how do we get this finished frame with the photo onto our scrapbooking page? Remember that we're working with my actual original template. So what I'm going to want to do is save this to my hard drive. I'm going to say File, Save As. Navigate to where you want to save this. I'm going to save it in the same location, but the important part is to give this a different name so that we don't save on top of our original. And I'm going to call this Tahoe, so I know that that's what the pictures are of, and say Save. Now my original template is safe, and I can do whatever I want to this template without worrying about affecting my original. So there are a couple different ways that you can get this finished image onto your page, and I wanted to show you two ways to do it, and how you do it is up to you, but there are two options that come to mind for me. I'm going to select all of these layers and bring them intact over onto my scrapbooking page. So I'm going to click on the top layer, hold down the Shift key, click on the bottom layer, and then with my mouse on the document window here, I'm going to click and drag it up to my scrapbook layout, and then when I'm here, I'm going to let go. Now it's sort of hit or miss where Elements will actually drop this set of layers. So you may have to click and drag all of these layers, select them if they're deselected, and drag them to a different location. For instance, if it had come underneath this doily, that wouldn't be good. It did happen to come in over the doily, so I'm fine. Once you've done that, remember all these layers are linked together, so I can click and position this anywhere I want to. One benefit of working this way is if you decide that you want to swap the photos out, you can see what it would look like right here on your layout. You could just delete this photo and then repeat the steps I just showed you to add a different photo in. So that's one way to do it. I'm going to undo this. I'm going to Control or Command Z once, twice. All my layers are gone. I'm going to come back to my postage stamp here. And the other thing we can do is merge all these layers to make a flattened version of them. I've got all my layers selected. Again, click on the top layer, hold down the Shift key and click on the bottom, and then come up to Layer, Merge Layers. That's going to take everything, smush it down into one layer, and now I can click and drag this as we did before up onto our example, onto my layout, and let go. I only have one layer here to deal with. So it sort of depends on how you like to work. Let's go back and take a look at this one here. The reason that I had you save that PSD file is if we were to save this now, we would lose all those layers. But that's okay because we have my original template. We saved this template with a different name. So if you forget, and when you go to close this file and accidentally save on top of the one that we had just saved as Tahoe, that's okay because you can recreate it with the actual original template. Or if you want to, you can just Control or Command Z when you come back to this window. You'll get all your layers back, and now you can save the file again. Now let's take a look at using one of these multi-photo spot frames. I'm going to click and drag this one into Photoshop Elements. Move this out of the way for you here. Again, let's take a look at what's provided here. This layer, there's quite a few layers here, so let me just make this a little bigger so you can see them all. The very top layer on this one is a staple. Let's hide that. And then there is the postage stamp frame itself. We'll hide that. And the next thing that you see is that there are 4 separate masks here for 4 separate photos. And these are numbered to correspond over here. So those numbers, number 1 over here is the number 1 over here. So the idea here is that you could attach 4 separate photos, one to each of the masks, as we did just a minute ago. And let's just do that real quickly. I'm going to open up this photo. I'm going to click and drag it. I'm going to hold down the Shift key. If you hold down the Shift key, Elements will try to center the image that you're trying to drop. So now that I'm here, I'm going to hold down the Shift key and let go of my mouse. You can see this is a gigantic photo. It happened to come in right above frame mask number 1, which is where we want it. But let's do a Control or Command T to see where the transform handles are. This is such a big photo, and this will happen if these are photos from an actual camera as opposed to your phone. That again, I can't see the transform handles because the image is so big. So I'm going to hold down the Control or Command T and hit minus on the keyboard, and that's going to zoom out so that those control handles come into view. And then again, I want the diagonal arrows on the corner. Click down and drag inwards to resize this photo. Remember, we want the photo to be larger than the mask. It doesn't have to be the exact size, but it does have to be larger than the mask. Let's just go ahead and leave this one here for now and just say okay there. Now remember, we need to clip this photo to the mask. So with the photo layer activated, I'm going to come up to the menu and say Layer, Create Clipping Mask. And then I can obviously move these into place, or I can further control the size of this. If I want a little bit more of this photo to be there, I can do that as well. Let's do that again with photo 2. Now I'm going to click on mask number 2 and hope that Elements actually drops this image into the right place. So let's click on this one here, click and drag it over to the frame, hold down the Shift key, hopefully it centers it, and again it did, it put it in the right place. Now it looks odd because you've got this other photo up here, but that's okay, it will look okay in just a moment. We are going to create our clipping mask. So Layer, Create Clipping Mask. Now the photo is here, obviously it's way too big, so once again Control or Command T to get the transform handles, click and drag the photo to the size you want. It's not important that you get it perfect. Remember, it just needs to be larger than the mask itself. Let's call that one good. Now we're going to do the same thing with mask 3, photo 3. I think that's the same one we just did. Let's do this one. Click and drag, hold down the Shift key. Create our clipping mask. And then Control or Command T to adjust the size of this photo. Gonna make it here, and that looks really, really big. So let's get those transform handles, Control or Command T. Make this one smaller. And let's do the last one. Oops, click the check mark. Let's do the last one. Let's do this golf course here. Click and drag, and I'm clicking and dragging from the center, and then hovering over the tab of the file I want to drop it on. Hold down the Shift key, let go of the mouse. We need to do this here so you can see, and then create our clipping mask. Layer, Create Clipping Mask, and let's make this smaller. Control or Command T to get the transform handles. Move this into position here. This photo has a great view of the sky, so let's make this even smaller here. Boy, that's so hard to see on the screen. Yep, I think this will be good for our purposes here. Let's put the frame visibility back on so you can see the full effect of that. So I've attached 4 separate photos into these windows. That makes a really, really cool looking sort of postage stamp. But the important part here is that there is another alternative. You'll see that there is another alternate mask here, and it says for 1 photo. If you hover your mouse over there, you'll see the little tooltip. It says an alternate mask for 1 photo. So let's hide these. All of these. I said hide, but you have to hide the mask and the photo. So we want to hide, 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 hide. This is visible. This is okay. So now we've hidden all those photos. Let's use this mask instead. And when I activate this mask, the instructions say clip 1 photo to this mask. So let's go get this golf course photo right here. I'm going to click and drag it as we did before. Hold down the shift key to try to center it. Now let's go ahead and clip this to the mask below. The photo, oh, see what it did? It came in between photo mask 3 and that photo. So don't freak out if that happens. Elements is just unpredictable that way. I'm going to click and drag my photo down to on top of the mask. And you see how as I look at the area between frame 3, mask 4 here. I'm going to click and drag. I want it right above that. See how that line, the divider line between the 2 layers got darker? Can't see it there, and then it's darker here. That lets me know I'm in between the 2 layers, and then I'm going to let go. So now it's in the proper place. I'm going to create my clipping mask, layer, create clipping mask. And now once again, Controller Command T, so that I can get the transform handles and then resize this photo properly to fit in the opening the way that I want it to. Green check marks to commit. So there you have it. There we have really cute 2 different options, really cute, fun different options for this same template. 2 different ways to use this template to get a different effect. Remember that you're going to want to save this and then either drag all of your layers or flatten all the layers so that you can drag this onto your page. Let's go ahead and flatten them. I'm going to select the top layer. I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom, hold down the shift key, select the bottom layer, then layer, merge layers. Remember, you will have saved this file first, so in case you mess up. Then click and drag over onto our layout. And there you go. Let's hide this one. Okay, there's one other thing I wanted to show you about these templates that make them even more versatile. The one that we're working on has a staple on it. And this one here has a couple of pieces of tape that are holding the photos down. So you can take a staple or a piece of tape from one template and use it on another one if you want to. Let's go back to what we just did, the this one with the multiple photos. I'm going to Controller Command Z to undo my merge so I get all my layers back. And you can see that the staple is right here. Now remember that I said that these layers, they're all chained together. So if I want to move the staple, I have to unlink them. And you can just do that by clicking on the little gold link on the one layer. Now that layer, I'm free to move that staple around. So I can move it anywhere I want to. Let's say we want to put it on that other postage stamp frame that we use. So I'm going to click and I'm going to drag it. And I'm going to hover over the first template that we did, and then I'm going to drop it right on top. Now let's zoom in here so you can see it. It came in below my frame. I need it to be on top of my frame, and probably want to make this, where did it go? Probably want to make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to click and drag it down, and this is a small frame, so I'm probably going to want to click and drag that corner handle in there to make, oops, oh, I just made it disappear. I clicked the wrong way. Let's try that again. See, even designers make mistakes. I want the diagonal headed, double-headed arrow so that I am resizing, dragging it in, and then say okay, and then reposition. So just because one template had a piece of tape and another one didn't, doesn't mean you're stuck with that. You can you can move those little bits in between the templates if you have them both open. Another way you could move a layer, in case you don't know this, just as a little tip, is let's say I wanted to move this staple over to my layout. I can right mouse click and say duplicate layer, and in this dialog box it says where do you want to put it. So let's go put it on my sample layer, on my sample scrapbook page, and say OK. Now if I come over to my sample scrapbook page, you will see that it put the staple, put it in a weird place. It just dumped it right here, but I can move it up to the top of my screen, and we should see that staple came in. Oh, it's tiny, so hard to see, but it came in over here, and then we can move it into place. So if you have trouble with the clicking and dragging from one file to another, the right mouse click and duplicate should work for you as well. So that's it. Those are my tips and tricks for using the layered postage stamp frames. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them below. And I want to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy using these postage stamp frames. I think they're a really cool little accent to add to your scrapbook pages. Thanks for watching.